In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, all praise is due to the Lord, Master of all the worlds, and peace and blessings be on all His prophets, and especially His final prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, and my equals in humanity, I bid you the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. We know very well that the human being is a social animal. Without a doubt, our social life plays a fundamental role in our success as human beings. And therefore, many of the questions that you've sent me are questions of a social nature, in recognition that many of us face many different social environments, social scenes, and ask ourselves the question, how can we be a Muslim and at the same time be in some potentially difficult social situations? I don't envy many of the viewers who are in positions much more difficult than mine. I might go to a certain social gathering and may be recognized as a person of the clergy or as a person of that particular religious field or religious profession. Whereas for doctors out there, for lawyers out there, for bankers out there, and indeed for our youth in the university and college scene, you find that they face certain social situations which they ask me in their questions, are these borderline halal, haram? How do I react to them? Would I be disrespectful if I attended, if I didn't attend? Would I be disrespectful if I open the conversation or close the conversation? There are many different social situations which especially the Western demographic of Muslims are facing. Our youth are facing situations where they're trying their hardest to present a great image of the religion of Islam, but at the same time are fearing that they may hurt someone's feelings in some of their social behaviors. Therefore, let's try and address some of the questions that I've been emailed by many of the youth from around the world in terms of social settings and social scenarios, and see how the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, guided us alongside the Quran on these areas. Let me be very clear from the outset that you can have a fantastically fun and enjoyable life, but also be known to be religious. Those of you who know me will know that not only do I lecture throughout the year around the world, but I also am very clear in my enjoyment and in my support, indeed passionate support, for Liverpool Football Club. I'm very open about this. I go to watch them on a regular basis, and indeed have watched them on a regular basis since a very young age. Now, someone may turn around to me and say, well, how could you be someone religious and go to the football ground? Well, when I go to the football ground and watch my team play, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to indulge in every activity that surrounds the social scenario or social scene around a stadium of any sport. I don't have to drink alcohol on the day, nor do I have to gamble on the day. But I can at the same time enjoy watching 90 minutes of football with friends of mine. Someone may ask, well, and how are you able to keep up your prayers when you go to watch a football game in that 90-minute period? Many of those who have traveled with me far and wide around the world to watch my football team play will know that we've always made this a point to pray our Dhuhr prayers, our Asr prayers, our Maghrib prayers, our Isha prayers, wherever we are in the world. And indeed, that means that this could be used as a metaphor for having fun while being religious. Sadly, people don't realize religion is not providing you with laws so that it suppresses you. It's providing you with laws which are providing boundaries for you so you could actually make use of the world that surrounds you without harming yourself. If you look around you, the religion of Islam doesn't say it's haram, for example, prohibited to drive a nice car. Those of you who are fond of the fastest cars in the world, there's no harm owning a fast car, driving a fast car. The religion of Islam doesn't say don't go to a beach resort and enjoy a good holiday. But the religion of Islam tries to make it clear that if there are certain areas where you are going to go away or deviate from the path which the Ahl al-Bayt have set, that's when you have to be careful. If I'm going to be driving my car and playing out music loud to disturb the people of the neighborhood, then that enjoyment has now gone against religion. If I'm going to go to a particular resort and start indulging in the drinking of alcohol or going to the nightclubs, then that particular enjoyment is now going outside the boundaries of religion. Therefore, you find that the religion of Islam wants you to be someone who enjoys the world within which you live. At the end of the day, this world was created for us, the human being, was created for us to enjoy, but within certain limitations. So those of you out there who want to enjoy your sports, want to enjoy your holidays, want to enjoy your fashion lines, want to enjoy your beach resorts, enjoy all of them. But try and also remember being conscious of Allah's presence at all times. Because without your Lord, you'd never be able to enjoy any of these privileges in life. I don't deny that there's a lot of peer pressure to indulge in that which is prohibited. When I was younger, knew the effects of peer pressure. And I don't think there's anyone in the world who can walk away and say that they didn't feel the effects of peer pressure. But there are certain moments where you have to make a stand, and sometimes making that stand earns you more respect. I had a friend of mine who worked for a very renowned consulting company. Whenever they wanted to go out for dinner, they wanted to go to certain environments which were not necessarily conducive for him being a Muslim. From the first time that they wanted to go towards such a restaurant or such a nightclub, he made it clear that I can't go towards places where alcohol will blatantly be served on my table. And at the same time, I cannot go to places where halal food is not served. Yes, I can order fish on the menu, let's say, or a vegetarian meal. But preferably if there is a place which is a halal restaurant that can meet all of our needs, that would be something I would definitely be satisfied with. Because of the fact that he didn't conform to what the peers were feeling, and he didn't feel out of place making his beliefs known, they all respected him because they felt that he was a person of principle. Yes, we will face peer pressure, but the first thing we need to do is set our principles clear. There's nothing to be embarrassed about as a Muslim. Nor does a person have to instill or push their beliefs on everybody else. No, at the end of the day, I'm just setting out what environment is conducive for me according to the religion that sets out my way of life. That's on the first level. On the second level, beware of the people who are putting pressure on you and reflect whether they are good friends. If that person is putting pressure on you to disobey your parents, disobey your religion, then that type of pressure isn't something that you should be living with. That only builds negative energy in you, which you end up taking out on your family or indeed on your friends. Thirdly, look at the examples in Islamic history of people who had moments of peer pressure and who came out victorious. Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi had a moment of peer pressure which arguably made or break at the same time his hereafter, as in he could have easily broken his future, destroyed his future, but he made his destiny. His peers were all saying, kill Hussein. His peers were all saying, torture the family of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Islam. But he himself said, I need to make a decision. And that decision is between this world and the hereafter, between heaven and hell. At that moment, he could have easily submitted to the peer pressure of your Umar bin Sa'ads and your Shimr bin al-Jawshans. But he stood up and he said, no, I'm going to go and do that which is right. And indeed, until today, we remember him because he stood up against the peer pressure of his time. Even the early Arabs, you'd find peer pressure would lead them to drinking alcohol. Many of them would only drink, not because they wanted to drink, but because peer pressure. Around us today, we see people who go clubbing. They drink the whole night. The next day you ask them, how was the night? They say it was amazing. You ask them, what do you remember? They say, I can't remember a single thing. How could the night be amazing when you can't remember anything, any part of that night? Don't conform to the peer pressure of those who are missing something in your life when Allah has blessed you with Ahl al-Bayt in your life. And there's no harm whatsoever a person saying that I am a British Muslim or I am an American Muslim. This is something very important for us to realize. Yes, I may originally be from the land of Iraq. You, the viewer, may be from the land of Pakistan or Lebanon or Syria or Iran or India or wherever you may come from in the world. But if you've been brought up in England, for example, what's the harm in saying I'm a British Muslim? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at your race or your tribe. He looks at your consciousness of His presence. If on the streets of London you learnt about open, free-minded thought, you talked with people about religion openly without being in fear of being put into prison, you were able to practice your faith every Muharram, every Shahr Ramadan, what's the harm of saying that I'm a British Muslim or I'm an American Muslim? At the same time, even if you're around your Muslim friends, if they say to you, what are you? There's no harm saying I'm a Shia Muslim. It's not a disrespect to any other Muslim of your friends. It's just to say that, you know what, I am of those who believe that we hold on to the Quran and the Ahl al-Bayt. as the two weighty things which the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, had asked us to hold on to. Once again, don't be someone who's embarrassed to look at your current climate and say that this climate helped you to become who you are. Too many times in our communities we're damning that our environment is what destroys us. Our environment is what has made us not religious. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, grew up in an environment where they used to bury their daughters alive. Yet did that environment necessarily affect him? Did he blame everything that's happened in society because of that environment? No. You have a chance to control your own destiny, but there's also moments where you have to have a sense of pride and thankfulness for the environment that's allowed you to cultivate your personality. Make sure that you appreciate what your parents have gone through and what they've done for you. I've seen too many youths in the world today who are very rude to their parents, ungrateful to their parents, arrogant towards their parents. Whenever anything's gone wrong in their life, they always blame their parents. The reality is that we'll never appreciate what our parents had done for us, and especially those of us living in the Western world. Our parents in the Middle East, many of them had like-minded personalities around them. They may have had a religious environment around them to help them cope with the pressures of bringing us, the youth, up. Whereas our parents in the Western world and very Western-oriented environments, they had to work their socks off, not to just make ends meet, but to build for us a Husayniyah or a masjid or an Imam Barga where we were able to go and sit down and remember Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. Yes, I don't deny, our parents may have a worldview which we have begun to realize was a worldview which was only for that time. They may even have a very narrow-minded worldview on certain issues. But there's a way to talk to your parents, even if you differ with them about their worldview. If my parents have a particular culture when it comes to weddings, yes, I know, it's not Islam that decided that culture. Maybe their village, maybe their city, maybe their country. But there's a way to tell them that, for example, that culture has now evolved. It's not by being rude, nor by leaving the house, nor by even cursing, or by acting rudely with our parents. Rather, we sit down with them and ask ourselves, how would the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family would have wanted us to talk with our parents if he was sitting with us? Would he have wanted us to raise our voice against our parents? I don't deny our parents have certain cultural beliefs that aren't Islamic beliefs. But we shouldn't arrogantly turn around to them and say, that's a load of nonsense. There's a way in which we talk. We have to be aware that sometimes the whispers of shaitan affect the way that we talk to our parents. Whether it's me as the speaker or you as the listener, each and every one of us at one stage or another has been affected and have forgotten the Lord who said to us, do not even say uffin to your parents. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, when asked why the word uff, he said if there was a smaller word, Allah would have used it. Sometimes you have to sit back and reflect that our parents are our root and we are simply a branch. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be. So whenever we see something in ourselves which we are proud of, we should realize our parents are the very root of that area that we're proud of, and that we should thank Allah for their presence in our life. I don't deny that sometimes parents preach things which they don't practice. It happens. There are times when parents, for example, will turn around to you and say to you that, you know what, go pray, and you don't see them pray at all. They'll tell you, why don't you read Quran, and you never see them pick up the Quran. They ask you, why don't you go to Hajj, and you find out that they went to Hajj 25 years after they're asking you. Well, the reality is that sometimes our parents' heart is broken because they realize that that which they weren't doing at your age is something which they want you to do. Do not forget that sometimes our parents, the knowledge that they were privy to is not necessarily the amount that we're privy to today. You watch this particular question and answer session now on a show which is broadcast around the world, while some of your parents may have been going as refugees from country to country. So if I do see my parents not practicing that which they're preaching to me, sometimes it's because my parents are telling me to do the things they wish they could have done were it not for their turbulent and trialsome earlier years. I know parents that had to leave Iraq because of the Ba'athist regime. They could have learned so much more about religion. They were only concerned about finding safety and security. When they tell you to pray and they tell you to fast, they remember the days where they took religion for granted. And they took religion for granted and thought to themselves, nothing will ever change. And then they realized that, you know what, they lost friends at a young age. And they realized that the harams and the mosques they used to go to are not the ones they could go to today. So when you hear your parents saying certain things but not practicing them in the best ways, sometimes try and give them 70 excuses before you look down at them. Following on from this particular discussion, there was a question that was asked that sometimes our parents don't let us go to mixed gatherings. And the questioner had said that, you know what, they're fun, so why don't you allow us to be in these mixed gatherings? Let's make something very clear. The religion of Islam was not against mixed gatherings if modesty was observed by the brothers and the sisters. Many of our maraja have allowed gatherings in which brothers and sisters are allowed to sit together in the community as long as hijab is observed. Sometimes there are people who say, oh, mixed gatherings are completely forbidden and nobody is allowed to go to a mixed gathering. On the contrary, there are scholars who have made it clear that if you're making sure hijab is not being compromised and Allah's laws are being observed, then there is no harm being in a mixed gathering. Ultimately, your taqwa is being tested in every part of the world, and especially in gatherings with people who are not mahram to you. Try and observe the hijab as a male as much as you expect the hijab of the female to be observed as well. One of the social questions we always get asked by the youth is, why aren't we allowed to date? Is there a possibility or is there a loophole for us to be able to date? And I don't blame the youth for asking, because many of them by the age of 14, 15, 16 in their schools are seeing their friends saying to them, I'm dating this girl, or that girl likes you. And sometimes there is that peer pressure that you think to yourself, well, why can't I date? The religion of Islam was only looking out for your best interests. You see, the religion of Islam values the relationship between a male and female. The religion of Islam wants early marriage. The religion of Islam wants an early union. The religion of Islam doesn't want later marriages. So someone says, well, why can't I date at a young age? It's because you begin to realize as you grow older how immature you were at that age. And it's too late sometimes to turn back and say, I wish I hadn't done that. The number of emails I've received from sisters who have asked, what is the penalty for an abortion? They aborted their child at the age of 16, at the age of 15, because they thought to themselves, well, what's wrong with dating? Everyone's doing it. And before you knew it, they made a decision which haunts them for the rest of their life. And so the religion of Islam was simply saying that try and be patient, don't give in to your desires at every moment, and try and find discipline in your life. Ultimately, what's the difference between a human being and an animal? Animals eat and we eat, and animals sleep and we sleep, and animals consummate and we consummate. But there is a sense of discipline in recognizing the rights of God before our own rights and the wishes of Allah before our own wishes. But if you do feel as a young man or woman that you are at a stage where you want to be in a relationship, again, there is no harm speaking to your parents and saying to them that while the rest of my peers are getting married at 21, 23, I don't mind getting married at a much younger age. And that is something that Islam finds virtuous. And I'm not going to say to you, like some people say, that you have to walk around the whole day with your eyes lowered. I hear many lecturers saying, lower your gaze, lower your gaze. Without a doubt, it's one of the toughest tests that anyone finds. And especially in a social world like the world of Instagram or the world of Twitter or the world of Facebook, where you feel that sometimes, you know what, I'm not actually talking to her face to face, so it's okay for me to be a bit more chilled in my conversation. Listen, it affects all of us. It affects me and affects you and all of us, where we begin to forget our social responsibilities. As a Muslim, without a doubt, being an acquaintance of your fellow Muslim or non-Muslim brothers and sisters is something highly recommended. You shouldn't be rude and uncivil and unsociable with brothers and sisters of other faiths or indeed your own faith. It's not right for a Muslim to simply walk around university arrogantly walking away from people or not even smiling, for even smiling is seen as charity within the religion of Islam. All Islam says is just beware of making a decision where you're going to build a relationship that could ruin not just your life, but the life of the person who you are with, and even a domino effect on your family life as well. Otherwise, why not? Have friends on Facebook, have friends on Twitter, have friends on Instagram, but try and make sure that the way you're interacting with them is the way that you'd interact alongside the laws of the religion of Islam. You want to do something, do it in a halal manner. Do it in that which has been prescribed by the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, and beware of indulging in something where later on you'll regret what you acted. There is no doubt that you're allowed to use social media. And I always try and give the metaphor of a knife when it comes to social media. A knife can cut an orange or it can kill a human being. Social media can have its positive as well as its negative usages. Positively, I'm able to interact with people who I haven't seen for many years. Positively, I'm able to invite people from the community towards the gathering. But negatively at the same time, the first of the negative effects, the spying culture. I start preying on everyone's lives, trying to see who's buying what, who's traveling where, who's married to whom, who's talking to whom. And the Quran says, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, and do not spy on one another. And secondly, without a doubt, you have to try and beware that the conversations that you are having, or the pictures, or the messages that you are liking or giving off, are they the messages and the pictures which the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam would be proud of? If someone, for example, is giving off messages on there which is far away from the ethos of the religion of Islam, by using foul language, for example, on their messages, by showing themselves not observing modesty on their messages in terms of the way they talk, or indeed the way they are able to give out certain sayings which are far away from the teachings of the religion of Islam, then there is no doubt you're putting the social media into negative usage. But don't be someone who is anti-social media. We have to keep up with the times as Muslims. We have to use the social media. But when you hear that voice telling you, stop, then try and stop. The Quran recognized us as social creatures and recognized that there's going to be certain social situations which aren't going to be the easiest. I really can't blame a youth in the 21st century in a hypersexualized society for how many tests they are now facing. I would even say that they face more tests than I faced in my generation. Because everywhere you turn, scantily clad images of certain personalities surround us. Everything is available on the internet, with recent figures showing 60% of the internet is made up of pornographic material. Even in the Quran, you find certain prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to face tests, very difficult tests, with the opposite gender. And one would think that the prophets wouldn't face such tests. I'll never forget Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam with Zulaykha, and she's running after him, willing to meet his every need without anyone in the community knowing. And yet Quran mentions quite beautifully in Surah 12, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبَّهُ, that she wanted him and he would have wanted her were it not for the mercy of his Lord. You see, Nabi Musa alayhi salam sets a wonderful example. He sees the daughters of Nabi Shu'aib needing help. He goes up to them, talks to them. There's no harm. You can talk. Have an acquaintance. Islam is not saying to you, don't talk to anyone. Tell them what's the issue. Oh, they need help getting water from the well? No problem whatsoever. Their father's an old man? No problem whatsoever. They wanted him rewarded for what he's done? Come travel with us. But even when you travel with us, the laws of mahramiyah have to be observed. So here you see two prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in social situations with the opposite gender. The Quran didn't treat prophets as robots. The Quran recognized that even the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that there were times they had to observe social hijab as well as physical hijab. And these are two stories which we can definitely apply into our lives today. There are many great social lessons that we may learn from the actions of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And once again, it highlights that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam should never just be seen as a theological figure or a legal figure in Islamic history. There's a social aspect to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Number one, the importance of gathering the community, even if some of them aren't necessarily your lovers. When he gathers them to pray and asks Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi to lead the prayer, and Hur says, "Oh son of Fatima Zahra, you must lead the prayer." Imam al-Hussein was highlighting the importance of unity socially. That try and be someone who unites the Muslim community that surrounds you. Try and be someone who brings people together. You pray together, eat together, break bread together. That's a definite social lesson that we can learn from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Number two, try and be someone who socially is known as a forgiving human being. Don't be someone who, the moment someone says something wrong to you, that's it, I will never forgive them again. Imam al-Hussein forgave Hur arguably the man who blocked water from his children. And once again, this is a fundamental lesson. Number 3, the greatness of woman within the building of Islamic society. Sometimes socially we don't let our women take political or social positions within the community. Yet were it not for Zainab, there would be no Hussein known by the world today. No doubt we need more time to discuss all the social issues that we face in the world today. I face tests in my social life, and I can only imagine what difficult tests you're facing in your social life. But through discussion and dialogue, and especially trying to get advice and counsel from the people of wisdom. Never doubt those who have seen this world and have walked the streets you haven't walked and have sat with figures you'll never be able to meet. The wisdom they would have acquired through knowledge and experience is a gift that you have to make use of. There are many youths in the world today who think their elders or their parents don't know anything. Believe me, they've seen a world which you may never see. And they've met people you may never meet. And they've been able to be victorious in social situations which you need to learn and acquire the skills of. Therefore, there is no better advice that I can give you in the 21st century than sit with the people of wisdom. Take their advice, take their counsel at each and every social step. And hopefully you'll be someone socially revered and socially remembered forever. Every year we ask ourselves, how difficult was it for Imam al-Hussein to bid farewell to his beautiful son Ali al-Akbar? When they embraced each other, he bid him farewell. Then he said to him, go and bid farewell to your auntie Zainab and to your mother Layla. He went, he embraced them, returned back to his horse. As he was about to go out on the battlefield, all of a sudden, Abu Abdullah called him back. He said, Akbar, come back to me. What was it? He wanted to bid him farewell. He said, you don't know how difficult it is for a father to see his son for that final time. I asked the question, Ya Abu Abdullah, how did you feel when you saw Akbar lying on the ground and you called and he called you with the cry, Assalamu alayka ya Sayyidi, Ya Abu Abdullah. One narration mentions that when Imam al-Hussein left to go towards Ali al-Akbar, he left but ran in the wrong direction. It was the opposite direction. Sukaina called out, Father, what's wrong with you? Ali is there. Why do you go the opposite direction? He said to her, Sukaina, do not blame me. The death of your brother has blinded your father. He walked towards the body of Ali al-Akbar. He noticed that he had bid farewell to him with one hand, but the other hand was on his chest. When he removed the other hand, he saw a dagger in the chest of his son. It's as if the poet said that he called out, Oh my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you have to lift the gate of Khaybar, but you never had to lift a dagger from the chest of your son. Come to Karbala and help me remove this dagger from the chest of my son Akbar. But then after that, there is a narration that breaks the heart. When Ali al-Akbar saw his father in those final moments, his father saw him smile, but then he saw him cry. He looked towards him, and that conversation is a conversation that really melts the heart. He said to him, my son Ali, I see you smile, but I also see you cry. Why is it that you smile and why is it that you cry? He said to him, Father, I smile because I see my grandfather Rasulullah walking towards me right now to quench my thirst. But then he looked at me and said, my son, but then why do you cry? He said, Father, I cry because I also see my grandmother Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam. I see her slapping herself on her cheeks for every time she sees you shedding a tear for me. Oh heart of Hussein, what did you go through when you saw Akbar lying on the ground?